Osaze and Ovie had a marriage many admired. He was a hard-working man, respected in his community, and she was a devoted wife and mother. They had a young son, Ife, who was the light of their home. Osaze loved his family deeply, though he was not overly religious. He believed in tradition and balance. Evie had always been spiritual, but after Ife was born, her devotion to the church deepened. She found comfort in the fiery sermons of Pastor Ehizogie, a man who preached about spiritual warfare, submission, and the dangers of worldly living. Osaze supported her faith, but he did not expect it to change their marriage. At first, it was small things. Evie started praying longer, fasting frequently, and attending night vigils more often. Then she began speaking to Pastor Ehizogie with reverence, quoting him in their conversations as if his words were divine law. Pastor said a woman should submit to her husband only if he is led by the Spirit. She told Osaze one evening, "Are you led by the Spirit?" Osaze frowned. "Evie, we have always respected each other. What are you saying?" But she only sighed and turned away. Evie's church commitment deepened. She no longer cooked for Osaze in the evenings because she had church work to do. She left their bed in the middle of the night to join online prayers. She started giving large sums of money to the church, calling it seed of faith. Osaze noticed the shift. The warmth in their home was fading, replaced by Evie's cold devotion to the church. When he spoke, she barely listens. When he asked for her attention, she claimed she was fasting or guiding her spirit. One night, he tried to talk to her. "Evie, I am your husband. We are drifting apart." She scoffed. "The devil is using you to distract me." Pastors say that when a person is close to their breakthrough, the enemy will use loved ones to pull them back. Osaze's chest tightened. "So now I am the enemy." She picked up her Bible. "I need to go for night vigil. We will talk later." She left, and Osaze sat in silence, staring at the empty space she once filled. When Evie's behavior worsened, Osaze reported the matter to both families. Her mother scolded her. "Evie, your husband is your crown. This pastor will not give you a home." But Evie was unmoved. "Mama, you are of the old ways. Pastor is leading me in the light." Even her father, a traditional man, was furious. "If you lose this marriage because of that pastor, don't come crying to me." But Evie stood firm. She was convinced they did not understand. She had chosen her path. Even when both families tried to intervene, Evie was adamant. Osaze began to notice the change in Evie's appearance. Evie, who once dressed simply for church, now wore fitted dresses. Her hair, always perfectly styled. Expensive perfumes lingered her skin, perfumes he never bought for her. Her phone, once left carelessly on the table, was now guarded like a secret. She smiled more at her screen, typing away with a focus she never gave him anymore. At night, she whispered into the phone, claiming it was a prayer call with the pastor. Osaze began to have the feeling of doubt, but he pushed it aside. She was a religious woman, devoted to her faith. Could she really be unfaithful? Then came the final sign. She withdrew from him completely. The warmth in their bed was gone. Each night, she lay stiffly, murmuring prayers. Whenever he reached for her, she would pull away. "I am consecrating myself," she would say. Consecrating for whom? The unease in Osaze's chest grew. One Friday evening, Evie prepared as usual for her night vigil. She dressed carefully, wore gold earrings and dabbed perfume on her wrist. "I'll be back in the morning," she said, not even looking at him. Osaze as usual nodded, but inside his blood burned. As soon as she left, he followed. He drove carefully, keeping a safe distance. When she reached the church, he parked far away watching, but she did not enter the church. Instead, she walked past the church gate, down a dark road, and into a small guest house. Osaze felt his stomach drop. His fingers tightened around the steering wheels. He sat in his car, waiting. His mind, a battle of hope and dread. 1 hour, 2 hours. Then he saw him, Pastor Hizoge, stepping out of the guest house, adjusting his trousers. Behind him, Evie emerged, her head low. She fixed her scarf, wiped her lips, and looked around cautiously. Their hands brushed briefly before they walked in opposite directions. Osaze's world spun. His heart pounded so violently that he gripped his chest. He felt like a man who had just been poisoned. Except it wasn't his body that was dying, it was his soul. The truth was clear. His wife, the woman who once swore before the families and ancestors had broken their sacred bond. Worse still, she had unknowingly placed his life in danger. He drove home in silence. That night, as she crept into bed beside him, he listened to her steady breathing. She had no idea he knew, but by morning, the whole village would. The morning after the betrayal, Osaze did not confront Evie immediately. He let the weight of the truth settle in his bones, feeling every crack of betrayal like a wound too deep to heal. He watched her move around the house, pretending to be the devoted wife, humming a gospel tune as she prepared breakfast. How could she still act normal? Osaze clenched his fist under the table. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but heavy. Evie, where were you last night? She barely looked at him. At the church, of course. His jaw tightened. Which church? She frowned, turning to him. What kind of question is that? The same church I go to every week. He exhaled, his heart pounding with rage. I know you weren't there. Evie's hand stilled. What are you talking about? Osaze pushed his chair back, standing slowly. I saw you, Evie. I saw you enter the guest house. I saw you with Pastor Ehizoge. The wooden spoon in her hand clattered onto the floor. She blinked rapidly, her breath coming in short gasps. I don't know what you're talking about. Osaze let out a bitter laugh. Don't insult me, Evie. I watched you. I waited. I saw when you came out, fixing your scarf and wiping your lips. Her face turned pale. Osaze, it's not what you think. His laughter died instantly. Then tell me, Evie, what was it? She swallowed, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. It was a mistake. I was confused. Pastor was just counseling me. Counseling? His voice was dangerously low. In a guest house? At midnight? Tears gathered in her eyes. I didn't plan for it to happen, Osaze. I swear. He said I was special, that I had a divine calling. I was weak. I don't know how it happened. You don't know how it happened. His voice rose, trembling with rage. Tell me, Evie, did you trip and fall into his bed? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I love you, Osaze, please, I can fix this. Fix? He took a step closer, his entire body trembling. Do you know what our tradition says? Do you know that my life was in danger because of you? Her sobs deepened. She fell to her knees. Please, don't leave me. I will pray. I will repent. I was blind, but now I see. Osaze's chest ached with unbearable pain. He had loved this woman, trusted her. Now she knelt before him, not in devotion, but in disgrace. So you can see now. He shook his head. You can see only because you are caught, isn't it? Evie crawled towards him, clutching his feet. Please, Osaze, don't abandon me. I was deceived. I will do anything. Please don't leave. He looked down at her, his heart breaking, but his mind was made up. There is nothing left to save. He turned and walked away. She screamed his name, but he did not stop. He was done. The moment Osaze walked out, Evie sat frozen on the floor, her body wrecked with sobs. She had prayed that he would yell, break things, or even threaten her, but instead, his quiet departure was worse than any storm. But the storm came the next morning. The word spread like wildfire. By sunrise, elders and family members were knocking at Osaze's door. His uncle, Pa Ebosa, an elder known for his strict adherence to traditions and customs, arrived first. Osaze, is it true? The old man demanded. His voice, rough from age, carried the weight of the ancestors. Your wife has broken the vows? Has she laid with another man? Tell me. Osaze, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, nodded. Yes, uncle. The entire room fell silent. The weight of his words pressed against the walls. The consequences of her infidelity was not just shame, it was death. Benin tradition was clear. If a married woman cheated, the spirit of the ancestors would strike down her husband unless he performed the sacred cleansing ritual. Pa Ebosa sighed deeply, gripping his walking stick. My son, you must cleanse yourself before the gods take their revenge. Osaze felt his stomach twist. He had spent the night battling with emotions, torn between love, anger, and the deep wound of betrayal. Now he realized he had almost died without knowing it. His own wife had nearly sent him to an early grave. Before noon, Osaze was led to the village shrine. The chief priest, an old man, dressed in red and white beads, prepared the rituals. "Drink," the priest instructed, handing him a wooden cup filled with bitter herbs. "This will cleanse the sin from your body." Osaze swallowed the liquid, his face tightening from each sharp acid taste. He was then instructed to bath in the sacred river, washing away any traces of spiritual contamination. As he emerged from the water, he felt both light and heavy, freed from the curse but burdened by loss. Meanwhile, Ivy faced a different battle. The women of the village turned against her first. They whispered as she passed, their eyes filled with judgment. "How could you throw away such a good husband? She disgraced her home for a pastor. Shame will follow her all her life." Even the market women of the village refused to sell to her. At the well, no one helped her draw water. She had been cast aside, her presence now a stain in the community. Then came the final blow, her own family. Her elder brother, Osamo Diame, visited her in shame. "You have disgraced us, Evie. We cannot protect you from this." Tears burned her eyes. "Brother, please." He stepped back. "You choose your path. Now you must walk it alone." The walls of her home, once filled with laughter, now echoed with silence. The scandal did not stop with Evie. The entire village turned its attention to Pastor Ehizogie, the so-called man of God who had led the married woman astray. By evening, a crowd gathered outside his church, demanding answers. The pastor, ever the smooth talker, came out with his usual holy demeanor. "My children, do not let the devil deceive you. The enemy is trying to bring down the work of the Lord." "Enough!" a voice rang out. It was Pa Egosa. "You are a fraud. You took another man's wife." The crowd roared in agreement. The accusation mounted. More women stepped forward, confessing that Pastor Izoge had manipulated them as well. By the next morning, he had fled. His one thriving church was abandoned, his name forever tainted. Osaze, though free from the curse, was not free from pains. Nights were the hardest. He would wake up expecting to hear Evie's voice, only to be met with emptiness. He struggled with trust. Even when women from his family encouraged him to remarry, he refused. "I need time," he always said. But deep down, he wondered if he would ever love again. As for Evie, she spent her days in isolation. She wrote letters to Osaze, begging for forgiveness. He never responded. She even went to his mother, kneeling before the old woman. "Mama, please, tell him I am sorry." Osaze's mother looked at her with cold eyes. "You killed his love, Evie. Leave my son in peace." With nowhere left to turn to, Evie withdrew from the world. She spent her days in regret, her nights in restless tears. She had worshipped the wrong God. She had lost everything, and the man she had once taken for granted was gone forever.